So, welcome to the course Unit 9, the ill effects of using dangerous drugs. Ill yan na. Ill, as in, may sakit. Okay, ill effects of using dangerous drugs. So, physical effects, psychological effects, emotional, social, mental, and economic effects. So, let's start. So, the ill effects of drug abuse. So, the life of an addict revolves around the drug abuse. Ayan. Meron tayong malnutrition and skin infections and skin rashes. So, ito, ganyan yung itsura niya. Okay? Ganyan ang itsura niya nung una. Tapos, in years of using meth or shabu, ganyan ang naging itsura niya. Parang yung rocker or rockstar. Sino kasi yun? Sa Pilipinas, yung mukhang ano na.
Pepe Smith, ma'am.
Oh, yan. Mukha na silang Pepe Smith, no? So, nagkakaroon sila ng malnutrition or skin infections and skin rashes. Ayan. So, alam mo yung mga nagtitake ng drugs sa itsura pa lang. Diba? So, the life of an addict revolves around drug use. So, he misses even his regular meals. He loses appetite and eventually develops malnutrition. Kasi, diba, kapag stimulus ang na-take niya, wala siyang ganang kumain kasi feeling niya busog siya or so whatever. Ganyan. So, likewise, a drug dependent who was tried on his own to withdraw may suffer from severe gastrointestinal disturbance that results to severe hydration. Kaya yan. Kasi nade-deprive yung pagkain nila. Kasi hindi sila nagugutom or so whatever. So, skin infections and skin rashes. Ayan. Oftentimes, the drug abusers neglects his personal hygiene. So, he uses unsterilized needles and syringe that results in skin infection. Ano yung mga nagtitake ng heroines, kapag natitake sila ng heroines, ang syringe kasi or yung injection, one-time use lang yan. So, kapag hindi yan naka-sterilize, kailangan, hindi mo na dapat gagamitin ulit yun. Pwede mo lang gamitin yun kapag nilinis mo. Or yung binababad mo na sa mainit na tubig, with saline solution, or so whatever. Ngayon, ang nangyayari, yung mga addict sa drugs, hindi na sila nagpapalit ng yung mga injection. Basta lagay lang sila ng lagay. So, tusok na sila ng tusok sa katawan nila. So, ang resulta nun is they will have a skin infection or skin rashes. So, skin rashes may even occur as a side effect or sensitivity reaction to certain of drug abuse. So, yan ang physical effects. Yan. So, sometimes physical effects could be infectious diseases such as tuberculosis, ayan, bronchitis, bronchial asthma, viral hepatitis, sequelae of drug abuse. So, marijuana smoking can produce physical conditions like chronic bronchitis and asthma. Physically ill persons like tuberculosis, individual who has suffered so much from his illness, may resort to relief of a drug abuser because of his use of unsterilized paraphernalia, tends to develop lower resistance and becomes susceptible to various infections. Among them are viral hepatitis, HIV, infections, and AIDS. An individual suffering from arthritis or terminal cancer experience acute, unbearable pains and insomnia is likely to become a drug dependent to opiates or sedatives. So, tingnan nyo, ganyan siya nung nagda-drug siya. After recovery, ito na ang tsura niya. So, let me show you the video, yung kung dun sa canvas nyo. Napanood nyo na ba? Para makita nyo yung mga physical, psychological effects of drugs. So, wait a minute. Kukulit, yun yung mga ADHD. So, meron ba kayong ganon? Pero
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am?
Wala ako, ma'am. Wala akong ganon, ma'am.
Yung mga ADHD, so, super, sila, likot, super energetic or so whatever. Pero, kapag, ang gamot sa kanila, stimulants. So, stimulants can make them, feel calm. So, di ba alam naman natin na stimulants ay uppers. Pag sinabing uppers, pampataas, di ba, ng energy, so whatever, pinapa-energy sila. Pero, the study shows na kapag binigyan pala ng stimulus itong mga ADHD people, okay, they will calm. So, parang siya, no, parang negative plus negative, it equals to positive. Siya. So, next is psychological effects. Ano ba yung psychological effects ng drug abuse? So, deterioration of personality with impaired emotional maturation. Ayan. Impairment of adequate mental function. Pag psychological, di ba, pag-iisip. Sometimes, psychosis, ito, madalas po, if you have taken drugs, okay, you will develop of thinking psychosis. What is psychosis? Psychosis is the what? John Dave Yao. What is psychosis? mag-remove na lang tayo ngayon. O, John Dave Gao, what is psychosis? Hello?
Ma'am,
Oh. What is psychosis?
psychosis.
Oh, sige.
Ano ma'am? Brain, sa utak, sakit ma'am, parang ganun.
Oo nga, alam natin, pinag-usapan natin sakit sa utak. Anong psychosis?
Yung nakakalimot ka na, ma'am, yung ganun.
Amnesia yun. What is psychosis?
Hindi po makapag-isip na maayos.
Makapag-isip ng maayos. Ang psychosis, ito yung withdrawal from reality. Di ba pinag-aralan yan sa human behavior? Ang psychosis come along with the illusion, delusion, di ba? And hallucination. Ano bang pinagkaiba ng hallucination, delusion, and illusion? Di ba? Sa human behavior. Kapag hallucination, ito yung mga colors lang yung nakikita nila, di ba? Yung parang rainbow, ganyan. Ganun ang hallucination. Illusion and delusion. Kapag sinabi nating delusion, false belief, maling paniniwala. Kapag sinabi naman nating illusion, it would be trigger. Meron mo na siyang parang trigger factor. Kapag nakita niyo isang bagay, tapos mag-iisip na siya na kung anong-ano. So, ganon. Illusion, hallucination, delusion, comes along with psychosis. Ang psychosis is the withdrawal from reality. Okay? So, psychological effects are, eto yon ang mga tawag dito, eto yung ang parang nawawala kayo sa reality. So, psychological effects, this comes along with your mind. Ayan, deterioration of your mind. So, sabi niya nga, laziness, lethargy, boredom of restlessness. Okay? Next naman, social effects. So, may social effects na ng pag-take ng drugs. So, kapag nagtitake ng drugs ang isang tao, okay, ang nangyayari sa kanya is, tawag dito, di ba, minsan nawawalan siya ng friends. Bakit? For example, okay, sino ba yung mga may group of friends dito? Open nga your cameras today. Okay, open your cameras today. Bakit kapag nagtatanong mo walang sumasagot? Okay, for example, sino may mga barkada dito? Or group of people? Oh, tanong. Di ba kapag may nag-drug sa inyo, anong nangyayari?
Masaya, ma'am.
Masaya, okay. What if kasama ka doon sa mga group of people na tawag doon matitino, tapos bigla ka lang nag-drugs? Anong mangyayari sa'yo? Di ba ikaw yung lalayo sa kanila? Minsan nawawalan ka ng kaibigan kapag nag-drugs ka. Kasi minsan ayaw na nila yung trip mo, kasi minsan hindi ka nila makontrol. So, social
Ma'am, di ka nabilong nun.
Oo, hindi ka nila makontrol, ganyan. Kapag ikaw lang. Pero kung kayo, group of friends na nagda-drugs, syempre, lahat kayo magkakapareho.
Ay, solid.
Okay? So, effects, ayan. Deterioration of interpersonal relationship and development of conflict with authority, sabi niya. Leads to crime, sabi niya. Social maladjustment, loss of desire to work. Ayan, syempre, tatamarin ka na. Study and participate in activities or to face challenge. Syempre, di ba, kapag sa mga friendship nyo, kapag barkada, kapag yung isa hindi nagpa-participate, syempre, magtatanong ka. Anong problema mo? Anong meron sa'yo? Kapag nakikita nyo nagbabago siya or so whatever, so minsan, magkikare pa kayo as barkada eh. Gusto nyo baguhin nyo siya. Or sometimes, gusto nyo, tingnan nyo muna yung dahilan na baka pwede nyo pa siyang mabago or so whatever. Pero, better it comes a times na iiwan nyo lang siya kasi hindi nyo siya makontrol kahit sabihin nyo pa sa parents niya. Diba? So, yun ang social effects ng mga nagtitake ng drugs. Next, mental effects. Ayan, deterioration of the mind. Nagiging bobo kayo. Dalawang effects ng drugs. Pwedeng papatalinuhin niya kayo. Okay? Or, gagawin niya kayong bobo. O yung parang walang alam, wala kayong alam ni isa, or parang babagal yung ikot ng utak nyo. Merong dalawang effects ng drugs. Pwedeng yung kapag take nyo ng drug, ang effect nyo sa mind nyo, papatalinuhin niya kayo. Magiging matalino kayo. I know some, yung iba ginagamit ang marijuana or weeds para maging matalino. Okay? Sometimes naman, okay, ang epekto ng marijuana sa kanila, pinapabagal sila. Okay, hindi ko sinasabi na kapag gumamit kayo ng marijuana, tatalino kayo ha. Baka maisip-isip niyo mag-take kayo ng marijuana dyan. So, as a result, diba, drug abuser's mind deteriorates gradually. So, in other instances, he abruptly loses interest and motivation in the pursuit of achievement and constructive goals. So, instead of providing him relaxation and escape from discomfort, drug and alcohol and tranquilizer may blur his attempts to come to terms with reality. So, his character becomes weak and inadequate in coping with his problem. So, the adverse effect on central nervous system, regular use of injection or large doses of substances reduces the activity of the brain and depresses the central nervous system. So, the drug dependent then manifests changes in mind and behavior that are undesirable by people in his environment. So, kapag sinatagal-tagal nagda-drugs ka, yung utak mo, kung dati pinapatalino ka niya, mag-deteriorate yan. Sabihin, pinapabobo ka na niya. Okay? So, for example, nag-take ka ng weeds kayo, nag-take ka marijuana. So, nakikita mo yung effect na parang tumalino ka or so whatever. Habang tumagal-tagal na tumatake ka ng marijuana, papabagalin niya yung mind mo. Hanggang sa magiging addict ka na. Bakit? Kasi hinahanap-hanap mo, ba't hindi ako nagiging matalino today? Yan. Hanggang sa di mo alam, lalo ka lang bumobobo. Diba? Or parang mangmang. Next, economic effects. Ano ang epekto ng drugs kapag sa economic effects? Inability to hold stable job. Bakit? Kapag meron kang drugs, or nagtitake ka ng drugs, diba? Kapag na, ano yan, ng co-workers mo, or na discover yan ng mga employer mo, anong mangyari sa'yo? Diba? Pwede kang maalis sa trabaho. So, it is impossible for a drug abuser to hold a steady job since he spends all his time and money on drugs. Diba nga, another economic effects nga nito, alam niyo yung sa dependencies on family resources. Ayan. Alam niyo yung, kanwari, kapag wala siyang pambiling drugs, ang gagawin niya, bebenta niya yung mga gamit nila sa bahay. Diba? Bebenta niya yung TV or so what, para lang makapili siya ng drugs. So, nagkakaroon ng economic effects. Inability to hold stable job, dependence on the family resources, diba? Instead of contributing to economic stability of the family, he becomes dependent and becomes economic burden to his family. So, besides depending on the family for his basic necessities, he also has to rely on the family resources to provide him money for the support of his expensive habit. Okay? Expensive habit kasi yan eh. Sino yung nasa likod mo? Bakit siya sumasayaw-sayaw? Diyan, Digyaw. Okay? So, ang nangyayari kasi dito, ayun nga, diba, kapag nag-drug sila, totoo yung napapanood niya sa TV na nagnanakaw na sila within their, with their parents or within their family. And then also, pwede siya maging resulted ng accidents in industry. Ayan. So, in a state of agitation or dullness of the mind, as a result, the drug he has taken, the dependent becomes careless and loses concentration on his job. So, consequently, an accident may occur which may adversely affect both drug abuser and his co-workers. Ayan. So, underlying causes. So, tapos na tayo sa mga effects. Ito. Underlying causes or influences of drug abuse. Kayo ba, kung magtitake ka ng drugs, anong dahilan sa tingin nyo? What is the most common cause? Bakit ka magtitake ng drugs?
By peers, ma'am.
By peers. Ano pa?
Yes.
Family
Stress,
problem, ganyan
family problem. Ayan. So, tama naman po yun. So, the drug addict or abuser is generally an emotionally unstable person. Kadalasan sa kanila, emotionally unstable. May problema, ganyan, broken-hearted, ganyan, may problema sa pamilya, ganyan. Emotionally unstable yan. So, he acquires the habit. So, he cannot face painful situations. Yan, yung mga drug abusers. So, ang gagawin nila, without the help of the drugs, talagang di nila kaya na i-face yung mga ganyang problems. So, he has not adjusted himself to his emotional reaction. Due to this, drug addicts have low capacities for dealing with frustrations, anxieties, and stress. So, every time na ang drug addict or drug abuser, every time he come up with the feeling of frustration, anxiety, and stress, ang nangyayari sa kanya, nagda-drugs na lang siya ulit. Para makalimutan niya or mais yung pain na yun. So, drug abuse is a multifaceted problem, exists in our locality and countryside. There is usually more than one reason why this problem exists. So, hindi lang po dahil sa problema niya or sa whatever. Madami pong dahilan kung bakit nagda-drugs ang isang tao. But most commonly, because of their problem. Ayan. Or parang family or emotional problem. So, number 1, we have biological factors. There are some reasons of pre-existing induced biological abnormalities of chemicals, physiological or structural in nature that induce a person to take drugs. The following are some to consider. Individual's general health. Diba? There are several diseases that easily make a person become a drug abuser. Kapag, examples, fatigue, chronic cough, insomnia, and discomfort. Okay? Meron po kasing instances na kapag may sakit ka, di ba? Nagiging addict ka dun sa talagang gamot mo. Kasi without that, without your drug, hindi ka magiging comfortable. For example, ang binigay lang na reseta sa'yo ng doktor is, you need to take, for example, BioFlu. Kunwari lang naman BioFlu 3 times a day. So, every day uminom ka ng BioFlu 3 times a day. Para lang gumaling yung or masakit yung katawan mo or so whatever. Ngayon, ang nangyari, habang tumatagal, nagiging dependent ka sa drugs na yan, di ba? Nagiging habit mo na ang pag-take ng drugs. Hahanapin mo niyan yung effect ng ng BioFlu. Kasi once na tumataas ang tolerance mo, once na nagiging araw-araw tinitik mo yan, tumataas ang tolerance mo. So, paano dumapasok ang drug abuse? Papasok ang drug abuse kapag tinataas mo yung dosage na hindi naman sapat dun sa dosage na binigay ng doktor. So, sabi niya, it is believed, sabi niya, that drug has a special power to prevent or to increase sexual capacity. One specific genetic theory proposes that there is an inherited defect in the production of endorphins similar to morphine. So, a deficiency of the substance leads to bodily discomfort. So, with the use of morphine, this feelings is induced. Ayan. So, according to the theory, a person who uses morphine has a physiological abnormality where endorphin production is less. What is endorphin? Endorphin is responsible for producing what? Hormones. Happy. Ayan. Or parang happiness. Yung mga endorphin na yan, yun ang dahilan kung bakit sumasaya ang tao. Nagpo-produce na yan ng glands na atin. Ngayon, kapag may problema sa'yo, kapag problema ang endorphin mo, therefore, ang gagawin nila, bibigyan ka nila ng morphine or so whatever, para lang maramdaman mo yung feeling na gano'n. Yan. May mga glands kasi tayo that produces our emotions. Okay? Kapag hindi nagpa-function yon, ang gagawin nila, bibigyan nila ng gamot para lang maging active yung ganong emotions mo or feelings. Okay po? So, ayan. Kapag merong problema, sometimes nga sabi na biological factors, kapag inborn defects yan, doon ka nagiging addict. Kaya may mga tao na kahit hindi naman niya gustong maging addict sa morphine or gustong maging addict sa heroin or so whatever, pero dahil sa sakit niya, okay, nagiging addict siya. Okay po? So, isang cause yan, bakit nagiging drug addict siya sa morphine, heroin, diba, opium, or codeine. It is because may sakit siya. Hindi dahil gusto lang niya yan, dahil may problema siya, hindi dahil peer pressure, so whatever, but because may problema sa physical abilities niya. Ibig sabihin, sa kanyang inborn body. Naiintindihan ba? Nakakasunod ba kayo?
Opo, ma'am.
Next. Okay? Common causation of drug abuse, ito naman, children of broken home. Ayan. Ito, another to. Easily join peer groups as substitutes as to the loss of their family. Ayan. Diba, ayan, kadalasan naman, mag-start ngayon sa rugby eh. O yung mga kalwari, mga rugby boys. Ayan. O kaya, weeds. Siyempre, bata pa sila eh. Yan pa lang ang accessible sa kanila. Rugby. Ayan. O kaya, kung hindi accessible ang rugby, ano yung accessible? Katol. Tumitira ng katol, tumitira ng gas. Ayan. Tumitira ng pentel pen, Q-tex. Ayan. Tumitira ng ang tawag doon, yung pangalis ng pintura.
Solvent na.
O, solvent. Andi, ano?
Thinner.
Yan, thinner.
Thinner.
O. Ayan. Kasi, children of broken home easily join peer groups as substitutes to their lost family solidarity. Siyempre, di ba, kapag bata ka, ang gustong-gusto mo, buong pamilya mo. Ngayon, kapag hindi buong pamilya mo, pupunta ka niyan sa mga barkada mo. Di ba? Anong gagawin nila? They will strike overprotectiveness of their parents. Sometimes for curiosity. Yan. Kaya try mo na yung grades, di ba? Try mo na yung gato or so whatever. Yan. To assert their independence. If napanood yung movie na Anak, yan nga, ni Vilma Santos and Claudine Berreto, diba? Si, nagre-rebelde siya dun kay nanay niya kay Vilma Santos. So, just to prove her independence from her mother, Vilma, ginawa niya, nag-drug siya. Yan. So, wala na daw pakialam sa kanyang nanay niya. So, to prove their guts, to escape problems, peer pressure, ayan. They believe that drug can deeper insights, ayan. The belief that medicines can magically solve problems, ayan. The easy access to drug or various source in an affluent society, yan ang problema sa Pilipinas kasi yung mga dangerous drugs na yan is available kahit saan. Kahit nga sabihin mong bata pa sila, high school nakakabili sila ng drugs. Kahit nga kayo diba? Diyan sa Fatima, kahit hindi nyo sabihin, alam naman namin may umiikot dyan. Diba? So, yun ang mga nagiging dahilan, especially kapag sa mga children, peer pressure and then broken family. Because they want to escape from the problems, escape from that emotional stress, and they want to establish, for example, strict naman yung parents niya, they want to establish their parang independence from their parents. Next, factors youthful in drug abuse, motives and attitude. Psychologically speaking, in terms of motives and function of drug use, some which may not be recognized by users themselves. The more drug is used, the more it tends to satisfy more than one motive or need. So, recent surveys of college drug use have induces the students' reason for drug use. So, kapag students kayo, in one study, smaller or larger group mention all the following motives. To feel more courageous. Sino ba makatake ng drugs dito? Ayan. Napifeel nyo ba na mas kayo? Mas matapang kayo? Ayan. To find out more about oneself. Siguro sine-check nila yung limit nila. What if magtika ko ng ganito? Ano kaya ang mararanasan ko? To have a religious experience from close to God. To come close to God. Ayan To satisfy a strong craving or compulsion. To increase or reduce appetite. Lalo na yung mga gusto magpapayat. Ayan, siguro nabubuli sa school. Or gusto naman niyang gising siya, madami siyang schoolwork. Ayan. To feel dull, sluggish, or improve sex. To reduce sexual desire and keep from being panic or crazy. To improve intelligence, sabi nga sa inyo, sometimes, diba, nakakatulong po ang drugs pang patalino. To improve intelligence, learning, or prepare stress. Ayan. To feel less depressed or sad. Relieve tension or nervousness. To make good moral last longer, relieve anger or irritation. Parang si John Dinatayag napaisip dun sa nakakatalino pala yung drugs. Okay. Sige, next. Okay. Personality and pathology. So, this psychology has been described as follows. Chronic low-grade depression, smoldering tense and restlessness. Ayan. A sense of not being taken seriously. Narcissism or egocentricity. What is narcissism? What is narcissism? Kanwari, narcissistic ka. Ano ibig sabihin ng narcissism? Sige nga, anyone? Human behavior. Narcissism. Pag sinabing narcissism ka or narcissistic ka, ano ibig sabihin yan? Ano yan? Ano yan? Yes,
Parang
gusto nga.
yung
Ano? Parang?
yung parang gusto mo.
Mhm.
Yung gusto mo, ma'am, gusto mo.
Ano pa? Anong narcissism?
Ma'am, parang obsessed.
Gusto mo ikaw yung nasusunod, ganun ma'am.
Manipulation.
Parang yung
Ano?
self-love.
Self-love. Ayan, ano yun? O, yung mga tinatawag nating GGSS.
Gandang-ganda sa self.
Gandang-ganda sa sarili, gwapong-gwapo sa sarili. Ayan, gusto nila sila nasusunod.
Ay, niltayag.
Gusto nila sila ang magaling. That is narcissism. Okay? So, personality and pathology. Next, preoccupation with issues of identity, autonomy, and freedom of expression. Repeated dwelling on drug taking effects, difficulty in interpersonal relations. So, yun ang nagiging psychology or pathology of drugs. So, family background. Ayan. Kasama na niyan. So, absent or weak father, overprotective man. Kapag may kulang sa pamilya nila, nagte-10 yan or nagiging dahilan yan para maging mag-cause yan or mag-cause yan para mag-take siya ng drugs. Kung wala man ang father niya or kulang man yung, basta kulang yung family members niya. Overprotective. Kapag naman sobrang strict ng parents niya, ganun din ang result niya, di ba? Magte-take yan sa drugs. Overindulgence and domineering mother. Yan. Inconsistent standards of behavior, lack of definition of limits. Hindi niya alam kung hanggang saan or kung hinahayaan ba siya or pag, for example, yung lack of definition of limits, wala namang pakialam yung parents sa kanya. Ganun din ang mangyayari sa kanya. Sobrang strict, walang pake. Ayan, kulang ang family members, maglilid yan para mag-take into drugs itong bata. Hostility or conflict between parents. Kapag nakita niya na laging nag-aaway yung parents niya. Ayan. Unrealistic aspiration for children. Ito. Kapag naman nape-pressure. Kapag yung bata nape-pressure from her parents or from his or her parents, nagtitake din din ng drugs. Diba? Again, these are the family background, diba? Or the causes why do people or why do some children they will take a drugs. It's either broken family, overprotective or overstrictness over the parents, okay? Inconsistent standards or parang wala namang pake, lack of definition of limits, okay? Or hindi na nga sila broken family pero nag-aaway naman sila. And the last one is parang na-pressure sila from the gusto ng parents nila or dun sa na-pressure sila dun sa pangarap ng parents nila para sa kanila. Okay? Next. The psychosocial factors, we have personality disorder and social disorder. So, personality disorder, drug abuse is a manifestation of an underlying character of personality disorder. So, thus, majority of the drug users are fundamentally immature, emotional childish, insecure of suffering from problems of adolescent. Diba, we have different personality disorder, kasama na nga yung pagiging narcissistic. Ayan. And then, we have social disorder, ayan, a sign of symptom of a family problem involving parent-child relationship. Ang social disorder, alam niyo yung mga tao na antisocial, yung ayaw nilang makisama or makahalubilo sa mga tao. Iba ang antisocial sa psychopath, ha? Ang psychopath kaya niya makipaghalubilo sa tao, pero still wala siyang nararamdamang feelings. Ang antisocial, hindi niya kaya, parang loner siya. So, yung parang mga avoidant type of personality. So, yun ang mga reasons or mga psychosocial factors why do people commit in using drugs. Yan. So, drug use do not also occur in isolation of other environmental factors, but rather is greatly influenced by these factors. Okay? For example, ito. Availability of over-the-counter and prescription drugs. Diba? Sa tingin nyo, meron bang kahit may problema siya, makakapag-abuse siya ng drugs kung wala siyang nabibili? Pero dahil nga easy ang access nila sa drugs, mas nagiging drug abuser sila. Influence of media advertisement. Yan. Minsan, kaya ayokong ipaano yung video nyo ipa-upload sa FB. Baka imbis na magkaroon ng parang anti-drug campaign, lalo lang kayong manghikayat na mag-drug sila. Diba? Kasi hindi pa na-check. Next, diba? Impact of affluent lifestyle or high employment. Yan. Effect of increased travel, exposure to different culture and social values. Modeling, diba? Social pressures exerted by fears, ayan. Collapse of religious values, ayan. Alienation and lower value on academic achievement. Kaya minsan, feeling niya, bobo na siya or so whatever, or parang feeling niya kapag uminom siya ng drugs, tatalino siya. Or kapag naman mababa ang academic achievement niya, pwedeng madedepress siya at tapos magtitake siya ng drugs. So, other factors, ignorance, curiosity, laxity of government and other authorities, mass media influence, nature society resulting in increased violent behavior for youth. So, next, ayan. Paano tayo makapunta kay drug addiction? Yan muna. Drug use, drug misuse, drug abuse, habituation, dependence, and drug addiction. Yan po ang parang pinaka-step by step bago ka makapunta kay drug addiction. For example, drug use. Iinom ka ng paracetamol kasi bakit? Masakit ang ulo mo or meron kang fever. Drug misuse, Hanggang sa na-discover mo, what if, iinom ko yung paracetamol kahit hindi masakit ang ulo ko. Eh di, ang naging epekto naman sa'yo ng pag-inom ng paracetamol na kahit hindi masakit ang ulo mo is parang nagiging masaya ka, parang magaan ang pakiramdam mo. So, drug misuse na yon. Okay, so parang one try lang. And then, nung hinahanap-hanap mo na yon, tinry mo ulit. Ayan na. Gumamit ka ulit ng paracetamol, uminom ka ng paracetamol, para lang ma-experience mo ulit, or ina-abuse mo na yung mismong paracetamol, kahit na wala kang mas sakit ng ulo. Diba? Drug misuse, kung minsan mo lang ginamit. Diba? Yung parang ginamit mo siya sa maling pamamaraan. Pero kapag umulit na naman, kahit alam mo na yung effects, that is drug abuse na. Okay? Ngayon, kapag paulit-ulit, repetitive yan, nagiging drug habituation. Okay? Ulitin ko nga habang tumatagal. Ngayon, kapag yung katawan mo, physical and psychological, hindi ka na makagalaw, hindi ka na makaisip ng tama kung hindi ka gumagamit ng drugs, from that repetitive habituation, nagiging drug dependent ka na. At kapag naging drug dependent ka na, yan na ang tinatawag nating drug addiction. Okay? Again, it will start from drug use, misuse, abuse, habituation, dependence, and addiction. So, isa-isayin natin yan. So, the concept of drug abuse. So, the term drug abuse most often refers to the use of drug with such frequency that it causes physical or mental harm to the users of impairs social functioning. Although the term seems to imply that users abuse the drugs they take, in fact, it is themselves or others they abuse by using drugs. Yan. So, traditionally, the term drug abuse referred to the use of any prohibited drug, prohibited by the law, regardless of whether it was actually harmful or not. So, dati, alam natin, kapag sinabi natin drug abuse, basta pinagbabawal ng gobyerno, ginamit mo, okay, that is just simply a drug abuse lang. So, this meant that any use of marijuana, for example, even if it occurred only once in a while, would constitute an abuse. Diba? Basta, ang traditional meaning kasi ng drug abuse sa atin, basta gumamit ka ng illegal drugs, drug abuse na. Tama po? Basta, pinagbabawal ng batas. Okay? While the same level of alcohol consumption would not. Diba? Tanong, alcohol is considered a drug or not?
Yes.
Bakit kapag yung alcohol, so nagiging addict ka na sa alcohol, hindi siya nagko-consider drug abuse? Diba? Traditionally, alam lang natin ang word na drug abuse kapag pinagbabawal ng batas yung drugs na yon. Kaya lang siya nagiging drug abuse, which is wrong. So, the term drug is commonly associated with substances that may be purchased legally with prescription for medical use. Other substances that may be purchased legally without prescription are commonly abused, includes alcohol and nicotine contained in tobacco and cigarettes. Yan. So, sometimes the use of drugs are medically useful in mood-altering drug for a purpose of altered mood and behavior without the benefit of the prescription. So, the use of drugs and substances having no legitimate medical application for the purpose of other than research. Yan. So, drug use muna kasi dapat. Ano naman ang tinatawag nating drug habituation? Ayan, di ba? Drug use, drug misuse, tapos drug abuse, and then papasok na ang drug habituation. So, what is drug habituation? It is a condition resulting from the repeated consumption of drug. Again, it is a repeated, paulit-ulit. So, characteristic of drug habituation, a desire but not compulsion. Kapag sinabing desire, gusto mo lang, pero hindi pa compulsion. What is compulsion ba? Compulsion, hindi mo na mapigilan. Okay? Kapag sa habituation, gusto mo lang paulit-ulit. Desire pa lang. Okay? A desire but not compulsion to continue taking the drug for the sense of improved well-being it engenders. So, little or no tendency to increase dose. Ayan. Some degree of psychic dependence on the effect of drugs but absence on the physical dependence and hence abstinence of syndrome. So, adverse and detrimental effects, if any, primarily on the individual. Tanong, paano po ba tayo nagkakaroon ng drug habit? Diba? Drug habit is acquired primarily in three ways. Association, experimentation, and experience doctor. Association. Okay. The tendency of drug abusers to look up for peer groups where he feels being wanted and accepted. For example, naghahanap ka ng friends mo na accepted ka. Tawag dito, Birds with the same feathers flocks together. So, for example, tinakwil ka ng kaibigan mo dahil nagtitake ka ng drugs. Pupunta ka niya sa mga barkada na okay lang or allowed silang mag-take ng drugs. So, anong nangyari doon? Kung habit nila yon na nagtitake sila ng drugs paulit-ulit, pati ikaw magiging habit mo yon. Diba? After nun, pwede rin ang tinatawag nating experimentation. The tendency of a person to try and explore the effects of drugs due to curiosity and others. Reason. So, kapag curious naman yung isang tao, di ba, nag-experiment siya. O, dagdagan ko nga, ulit-ulitin ko nga. Yan. So, kapag inulit-ulit mo yung experimentation na yan, hinahanap-hanap mo, therefore, that is habituation na din. And last one, inexperienced doctors. The tendency of doctors and physicians to unnecessarily prescribe drugs. Pag sinabi natin inexperienced doctors, may faulty dito yung mga doktor na mali ang prescription niya. For example, binigyan ka niya ng reseta na heroin. Which is, pag palatinik mo yung heroin, magiging addict ka. So, parang nagkamali dito yung doktor ng prescribe, drug. So, therefore, parang anong nangyayari sa'yo, paulit-ulit mo nang hinahanap ang heroin. Again, drug habituation means this is the repeated consumption of drug. Tanong, napipigilan mo ba yung sarili mo sa drug habituation? Anyone? Kapag drug habituation ba, napipigilan mo pa yung sarili mo? Na mag-take ng drugs?
Maybe, ma'am.
Well, the others. Bakit, Neil? Sa tingin mo, bakit?
Kasi ma'am,
Sige.
hindi mo pa man binisyo parang patikim-tikim lang.
Okay. Ang drug habituation, ito na, binisyo mo na siya, paulit-ulit.
O, mama, pipigilan mo pa.
Bakit?
Sabi nga, ma'am, desire but not compulsion.
Kasi nga, hindi pa to dependence. Kapag habituation, repetitive lang. For example, kape ulit bigyan ko ng example. Ito, drug use, uminom ka ng kape. Okay? Uminom ka ng kape. Drug misuse, uminom ka ng kape kahit, drug use, iinom ka sana ng kape para lang gumising ka. Drug misuse, okay? Uminom ka ng kape kahit hindi mo naman kailangan gumising. Okay? Parang gusto mo lang uminom ng kape or so whatever. Drug misuse na yan. Ngayon, nagiging drug abuse yan kapag hinanap-hanap mo yung pag-inom mo ng kape kahit hindi mo naman kailangan gumising or so whatever. Yan. So, after nun, kapag, syempre, nakita mo yung effects nun, yung drug abuse ka, ganun pala yung epekto ng kape, kahit hindi ko kailangan gumising, ganito yung epekto niya sa akin. So, yan na, drug abuse na. Kapag yung paulit-ulit mo na ginagamit na hinahanap mo yung effect na yan, tapos paulit-ulit mo ginagawa, everyday na siya, that is drug habituation. Pag, for example, Monday to Friday, uminom ka ng kape. Pero kapag Saturday, Sunday, nakakapag-skip ka pa. Parang for example, may kape doon. Ay, halina ako pa. Inom ko pa nandun eh. Ibig sabihin, parang napipigilan mo pa siya. That is drug habituation. Pero paulit-ulit kang uminom ng kape. Diba? Kapag yung kape mo, hindi mo na mapigilan. For example, hindi ka makatayo, hindi ka makagalaw ng isang buong araw, hindi mo ma-manage yung pagtatrabaho mo, kung hindi ka inom ng kape, that is drug dependence na. Kasi you are physically and psychologically dependent. And after ng dependence na yun, nagiging ka ng drug addict. Okay? Ito na. So, after ng drug habituation, it comes with the drug dependence. So, what is drug dependence? It is a state of psychic or physical. Dalawa ang dependence natin. It's either psychological or physical. So, it's either psychic or physical dependence or both. Ayan. On a drug arising in a person following administration of drugs on a periodic continuing basis. Concept of drug dependence. Okay. Drug abuse must be distinguished from drug dependence. Ayan. Drug dependence, sometimes called drug addictions, as defined by the basic three characteristics. Okay. Sometimes, ang dependence, nagiging parang meaning na din siya ng addiction. Sometimes, kasi nga, closely din siya eh. So, the users continue to take drug over an extended period of time, just the long this period is dependent on the drug and the user. So, the users find it too difficult to stop using the drug. So, they seem powerless to quit the drug use. Yan ang drug dependence. Users take extraordinary and often harmful measures to continue using the drug. They will drop out of school. Ayan na. Yan na yung, they will steal. Ayan. Leave their families, go to jail, and lose their job just to keep using the drug. Isipin mo, yan ang mga drug dependent. Kasi nga, sabi ko sa inyo, hindi sila makapagtrabaho, hindi sila makapag-isip ng maayos hanggat hindi nila natatake yung drugs na yun. So, the user stop taking drugs only if their supply of drug is cut off or if they are forced to quit it for any reason. They will undergo painful physical or mental distress. Ayan. So, the experience of withdrawal distress called the withdrawal syndrome. Ayan. Kapag ang tao naging, for example, everyday nga, uminom na siyang kape, hindi siya makagising or hindi siya makagalaw ng tama, if hindi siya uminom ng kape, ayan, nagkakaroon tayo ng withdrawal syndrome. Parang sa ano lang, sa sigarilyo, diba? Hindi naman agad-agad natatanggal ang pagsisigarilyo. Kapag biglaan mong tinanggal yan, yung pagsisigarilyo nila, anong mangyayari sa kanila? Manghihina yan, magkakasakit yan. Diba? So, drug dependence may lead to drug abuse, especially to the illegal drugs. So, physical dependence and psychological dependence muna tayo. So, physical dependence, it is result when a drug has been used for a long period of time and is only identified when the characteristics of withdrawal or abstinence syndromes occurs after it is used, disconnected. But ito yung mga physical, hindi ka makagalaw, ayan, or parang masakit ang, they feel na masakit ang katawan mo, ayan, yun na yung physical dependence kasi hindi sila nakakainom ng drugs. Or sometimes psychological dependence, it refers to the state in which an individual has compulsion to take a drug but one which must not be physical dependence. Psychological dependence, hindi niya mapigilan kakaisip na magtitake ako ng drugs sa ganito. Hindi ako gagaling, hindi ako makakagalaw hanggat hindi ako umiinom ng ganito. He kept on thinking, nagiging nakadepende ka na sa drugs. Okay, for example, hindi ka makatayo, feeling mo hindi ka makatayo or so whatever. Masakit ang nararamdaman mo, physical dependence, kasi hindi mo nainom yung drug. Psychological dependence, iniisip mo na hindi nakakagalaw yung utak mo, hindi ka nagmamanage, or pilit mong iniisip na kailangan kong uminom ng drugs na yun, kailangan kong uminom ng illegal drug na yun, kasi kung hindi ko inumin yun, hindi gagana yung utak ko, yan, you're keeping on thinking of that, and hindi gagana yung katawan ko. That is physical and psychological dependence. Physical, your physical body. You're not moving, feeling your mouth. Psychological, the compulsion of thinking. Okay? Hindi mo mapigilan. Okay? Kapag kasi biglang kinuha yung mga drugs na yan, it will result to tawag nating withdrawal syndrome. Mamaya discuss natin what is withdrawal syndrome. And last one, syempre, drug addiction. Ayan na. Kapag naging drug dependent ka na, ito na yung pinakalas, drug addict ka na. So, what is drug addiction? It is a state of periodic or chronic intoxication produced by the repeated consumption of drug, natural or synthetic. What is the concept of drug addiction? Drug addiction is a state of mind in which a person has lost the power of self-control in respect of drug. He consumes the drug repeatedly, leaving aside of all values of life. In other words, a drug addict will resort to crime even to satisfy his repeated craving for the drugs. Yan. So, the effect of addiction are mainly deteriorative, personality changes, ayan. They include insomnia, instability, lack of self-confidence, especially when not under the influence of drug. The addict cannot concentrate on any work. He avoids social contacts. Slowly, mentally, physically, and morally, he becomes from bad to worse and burden to society. So, what are the characteristics of drug addiction? Ayan. Compulsion or uncontrollable craving. Ano yan? The addict feels a compulsive craving to take drug repeatedly and tries to procure the same by any means. Kahit anong gawin niya, talagang ipipilit niya na magtitake siya ng drugs sa ganito. For example, shabu. Yan. Kapag drug addict ng isang tao, gagawa siya ng paraan para lang makakuha siya ng drugs. Kahit mag-commit siya na ng crime na yan. Tolerance. Anong nangyayari sa tolerance nila? There's a tendency to increase the dosage kasi nga hinahanap-hanap nila yung after effects of the drug to produce the same effect as to that of the original effect. Addiction, ayan. The addict is powerless to quit the drug use. Hindi niya kaya. Okay? Hindi niya kayang pigilan yan kaya sabihin niya magbabago na siya. Hindi pa rin niya kaya yun. Next, doon napapasok din yung tinatawag nating physical or psychological dependence. Sabi ko nga sa inyo, kapag naramdaman niya yan, yung physical or psychological dependence, ito na yung resulta ng drug addiction. After nun, ito na yung withdrawal syndrome. Kapag present ang withdrawal syndrome, that is drug addiction. For example, okay? The addict becomes nervous and restless when he does not get the drug. Ayan. After about 12 hours, he starts sweating. So his nose and eyes becomes watery and continue doing so increasingly for another 12 hours. Itong mangyari, for example, so may mga mukhang drug addict dito. Sige nga, kanwari si Deteng, drug addict, no? For example lang, si Deteng ay drug addict. Kapag bigla nating inalis sa kanya ang drug na shabu, anong mangyayari sa kanya? Ito ang mararanasan niya, withdrawal syndrome. So, paano po ba yung withdrawal syndrome, man? The addict becomes nervous. For example, inalis mo bigla yung shabu sa kanya. Ang mangyayari ganito, magiging siyang, nervyoso. Ayan. The addicts become nervous and restless when he does not get the drug. Hindi niya alam kung paano magpahinga, ganyan. After about 12 hours, yan, magpapawis-pawis na yan. He will start sweating. Bakit? Kasi hanggang ngayon, hindi pa niya nakukuha yung shabu. So, his nose and eyes becomes watery and continue doing so increasingly for another 12 hours. Pinagpapawisan ka. So, it is followed by vomiting. Ayan na, magsusuka na. Diarrhea, loss of appetite, and sleep. Respiration, blood pressure, and body temperature also rises. This will continue up to 3 days. Okay? 3 days kang ganyan. After that, the trouble starts subsiding and most of it's gone in about a week time. Completely recovery takes place within 3 to 6 months. Kung tutuusin itong withdrawal syndrome, ito po ang nararanasan ng mga nasa drug rehab. Yung pinarehab. Kapag pinarehab sila, yan, yung totally deprivation of drugs na yun sila. Yan, kaya nga sabi niya, ang complete recovery niya takes place to 3 to 6 months. Diba kapag pinarehab ang isang tao, sa batas nga nating RA 9165, the first the first offender in the usage of drugs, meron silang 6 months rehab. At yan po ang nangyayari sa kanila. At their first week, they will come up to sa tinatawag nating withdrawal syndrome. Bakit po nila nararanasan yan? Kasi yung katawan nila, nasanay na dun sa tinitake niyang drugs. Naging immune na yung katawan mo eh. Kapag bigla mo inalis yung drugs yan sa kanila, manghihina sila. Kaya, yun ang nagiging resulta, bakit sila nagpapawis, bakit sila nagsusuka, diarrhea, loss of appetite, and sleep. So, that is withdrawal syndrome. So, how is addiction acquired? Paano ka nagiging addict, di ba? So, people have the generally different motivation in life. So, the young ones are very much adventurous, and some of them have strong attraction in drug taking because this space or era belongs to them, so to speak. Thus, in things these days are drugs. So, to see drugs abuser around seem to be of common sight. Habituation, toleration, and dependence. Lahat nung sa steps, tignan nyo. Sunod-sunod naman siya, di ba? Yan. Lahat yan, kapag naranasan mo, it would lead you to drug addiction. So, dito, sabi niya, how will you acquire a drug addiction? It will come to habituation, toleration, and dependence. Habituation, repetitious addiction of drug, diba? Just to have euphoric effect, relief of pain or emotional discomfort. After nun, toleration, tumataas yung dosage mo. Yung tolerance ng katawan mo. Kaya ka nagiging drug addict. After nung tumaas ang tolerance mo, magiging dependent ka na. Yan. Alter the physiological state brought by a repeated administration of drug which necessitates the continued use of drug to avoid withdrawal syndrome. Magiging dependence ka na. Tapos nun, after yung dependent, magiging addict ka na. Yan. So, what are the group of classifications of drug abusers? Tingnan nyo yung mga, baka belong kayo dito. We have situational users, spree users, hardcore addicts, and hippies. Situational users, okay, those who use drugs to keep them awake or for additional energy to perform an important work. Sino itong mga to? Example ng situational users. Yung mga laging nagpupuyat. Yung mga driver ng truck, pwede. Yan. Umiinom sila ng mga drugs pampagising. Pwede rin po yung mga, di ba kung nababaltaan nyo, yung mga artista, nagtitik sila ng drugs. Bakit? Dahil din sa trabaho nila. They need to keep alive, ganyan. Yan. Situational users. So, hindi nila namamalayan kakatake na ng drugs and nagiging drug abusers na sila. Next naman, basta pag sinabi natin situational users, dahil meron silang gagawin. Ayan, because they need to perform an important work. Next, okay, spray users naman. Ito yung mga, kayo yan. Ayan. Spray users, school-age users, ayan, who take drugs for kicks, ayan lang, for adventure, for experience, as a means of fun, ayan. There may be some degree of psychological dependence, but little physical dependence due to mixed pattern of use. And then, we also have the hardcore addicts. Ayan. Ito naman, those whose activities relative resolve almost entirely around the drug experience and securing supplies. They show strong psychological dependence on the drugs. Ito na yung mga hardcore addicts, yung mga Pepe Smith na itsura. Ayan. And the last one, hippies, okay? Those who are addicted to drugs, believing that drug is an integral part of life. Yung mga hippies, paniniwala nila. Ang mga kulto ng drugs. Okay? So again, these are the group of classifications of drugs. Wait lang ha. So, stop ko na yung record.